In this video, I'm gonna be talking about cropping within Photoshop. And I love cropping in Photoshop over Lightroom because it has a few more features that stand out and can make your cropping experience much better. So let's jump into Photoshop and I'm gonna show you everything there is to know about cropping. All right, so we got this lovely image of Cannon Beach up here. And let's go ahead and hop over to the crop tool, which is this button right here. Gonna go ahead and click that. And the first thing you're gonna see changed is this option bar up here, which gives you your options for cropping. And you'll notice you will have these edge corners right here that will allow you to do your physical cropping. So cropping is literally just cutting out your image to be shaped how you want it. So if you want to crop, you literally just start dragging, and now I can crop it to this rock. If I were to click this check mark, it would go ahead and cut the image to that size. Let's go ahead and undo that with Control Z. And now I'm going to show you another feature. If you want to maintain the ratio, you can hold the Shift button and it will maintain the ratio when you drag up and down. If you want to lock it to the center, you can hold the Alt button and drag, and it will lock it to the center there. You can also hold Shift and Alt at the same time, and it will maintain the ratio while locking it in the center. As you can see, if you drag outside, it will show that there is nothing below that layer. So let's go ahead and undo that, and we're back at the original photo. So let's go through the options bar here and see some different options you have to adjust it. So first off, if you click this, you can switch between ratio and width height resolution. I would always recommend staying on ratio. If you switch to width height resolution, it's going to give you a few more options for printing. For example, if you click that, you can now adjust the pixels per inch or per centimeter. I never use this unless I am printing. So we'll be going over that in another chapter. So I would just stick to ratio for now. There's also a few popular aspect ratios here you can click. For example, 1:1 if you're posting to Instagram, 2:3 if you want a landscape, or 16:9, which is good for mobile phones. And as you can see, the numbers pop up here. If you click this button, you can switch between the two back and forth. And if you hit the clear, it will reset you back to ratio and you can begin dragging this freely again. The next tool I want to show you is the straighten tool here. So this image is honestly pretty straight already, so let's go ahead and twist it. If you want to twist, you just drag your cursor to the outside and you can begin to twist. And you'll notice it will always keep it within the image so that you're not getting any blank canvas in there. So let's go ahead and twist it like that. Click OK. And now let's go ahead and straighten this. So if we click on this straighten tool, we can simply draw along the horizon here, and Photoshop will automatically straighten that image for us. Next option in line is this grid button here, which if you click this, it will change the lines that go across your screen if you're trying to get some fancy shapes going with your composition. I mainly keep it on rule of thirds, but it's good to change it up every once in a while. Maybe you want a little golden spiral action like this photo here. Let's go ahead and switch that back to normal and get that back. The final two options I want to go over here are this crop with the delete button here. So if you click this button and you go to cut your image, when you crop, it will go ahead and delete everything that's outside the edges. The pixels won't be recoverable. So if I click OK there, now those pixels are gone. If I go to crop again, as you can see, it will just bring up blank canvas. So let's go ahead and undo that. I, in particular, never use this because I always like to maintain those pixels if I do crop. That way, if I decide I do want that edge, I can go back and have it ready anytime I need to have it. This final button right here is Content Aware Fill, which is honestly my favorite feature of cropping and why I mainly do it in Photoshop. So if you click this button here, when you drag and have empty canvas, Photoshop will go ahead and automatically create more pixels in there based off what it sees below that. So let's go ahead and click OK here. As you can see, it did a great job of creating that sky. And the content aware fill is good for adding tiny little bits to the edges of your photos. Say you twist a photo, for example, and now it's cutting off the edges, maybe like up here, and you really want to make sure that has pixels. If you click that, now it will add pixels there for you. So it's good to give you a little bit of breathing room in case you need it. The only places where this doesn't work very well is in places where there's a lot going on. So if there's tree branches and all sorts of weird textures and colors, it might have trouble balancing it. It honestly works best in situations like this where you have clouds or you have something like sand that's very easy for Photoshop to replicate based on its surroundings. One last thing I wanted to show you is how to create a border on your photo if you're printing it and want a border built in. So if you click on the crop and deselect the content aware fill, I'm gonna go ahead and drag this bigger, but I'm gonna hold the Alt button so that it maintains the same distance on every edge. So let's go ahead and do that and click OK. So now we have this empty border to fill. To fill that, we just simply create a new layer, drag it below that layer, and then we select the color we want here. Let's go with a little bit of a darker black, hit OK. Then we can hit this paint bucket tool and simply click on the border and it's gonna fill that in. So now we have a built-in border to our photo there. Simple enough. Next up, I want to go over a few cropping tips that I like to keep in mind because personally, I believe that cropping can make or break a photo, even if it's just by a few micro centimeters. And a lot of this relates back to composition. So if you want to learn more about composition, you could check out the composition videos in the photography part of this course. But I do want to go over some stuff in Photoshop that's very specific and can make your crop better. So let's go ahead and jump to this photo of the gateway arch here. One tip that I like to have is to crop on edges. So I like making this meet right in these corners here. And this gives that image that much more power. It makes it feel like it's more time was put into it. And even if the viewer doesn't notice it consciously, subconsciously they notice that there is some order to this photo and it makes it feel more intense. This also can apply to landscapes. So as you can see, I went ahead and cropped right in that corner up there in the top right, perfectly along that tree line. And this leads me to my next point, which is giving images space to breathe. So one thing I like to do is find subjects or leading subjects in the photo and make sure they have enough room within the photo. What I mean by this is this tree, for example. So the main subject here is this waterfall, but this tree is a pretty heavily supporting subject here. So as you can see, I left a bit of room up here for that photo, for that tree to be in frame. And this not only applies to main and leading subjects, but also to any other parts of the photo. So as you can see, I made sure this root was also kept within the crop here because that subtly leads the eye in, even if it's not where the viewer initially looks. So as you can see, if I were to clip the crop button here and just crop this down a little bit, you would notice that the image is going to lose a lot of its power because now that tree looks like it's cut off and it isn't highlighted as much and it just looks like some random object. Another example is in this Yosemite photo here, where I left some room for this tree to breathe up here. And as you can notice, this rock is entirely within the frame. If I were to go ahead and crop this up a little bit, maybe put that down and cut those off, this image instantly loses a lot of its power. And now this rock doesn't look as powerful and the tree just looks kind of random. So always, always leave room to breathe on your subjects. Another thing I like to do is shoot wider than anticipated. So even though I'm in camera and I'm shooting, I want to just make it slightly wider, even if I know I'm gonna crop later on. This gives me room for error, especially if I'm gonna be twisting the photo later on and have edges come up. You always want to have that extra data if needed. So this is a raw photo. It hasn't been edited at all. It's straight out of camera. And I took this photo knowing that I really liked the textures going on here. But I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do with it later on. And to be honest, in the moment, we were pressed for time and I had to get out of there pretty fast because the tide was coming in. So what I did was I took this photo extra wide, knowing that later on I was going to come through and find a crop that might be more suitable to an abstract formation. So as you can see with the final product here, this is what I ended up with. I ended up cropping a little bit tighter because this to me looked like an eye, this looks like some teeth, and this almost looked like an eyebrow here. So that's the subject that I landed on. And you know, there's a variety of ways I could have gone with this. I also could have gone this way and maybe had a multi-layered shot here. There's all sorts of things that you can do, even if you want to get really, really small with it and just make a shot that's, you know, only about a certain corner or something. So with macro shoots, shoot really wide and you could figure out the crop later on in Photoshop. So that's basically everything you need to know about the cropping tool. It's a pretty basic, easy to learn tool, but if you know all those functionalities, it can take your cropping skills to the next level. Let's go ahead and hop to the next video.